in the morning, although I'm curious how many people were at the keynote. Anybody? Oh, good. All right. So my name is Doug Olson. I'm the general manager of the Expression Blend team. And in case you get confused, I'm the Scandinavian guy that has no hair. And, you know, as I was thinking about this, there's something I just don't understand. So, you know, Scandinavian people, even I live in the United States in northern latitudes, and Scandinavian people tend to be bald, and it doesn't make any sense because you're living in the cold. You know, southern latitudes, you live in like Italy, and everyone's got hair all over the place. So I just don't understand it. But anyways, it's a problem, and so, oh well. Christian, my buddy over here, is, I was going to say has a lot of hair. You don't have all that much hair. Oh,
no, not really.
All right. Well, anyways, Christian's going to be taking us through demos of Blend, and I'm going to be talking about them. So, anyways, onwards. So, before we talk about Blend 3 more, by the way, when I talk about the future of Blend, it's actually Expression Blend 3. So, Expression Mission. This is something that we've been thinking about really since the inception of the expression tools. And it's really a mission that sort of drives what we do. And it's stated pretty simply. Our job really is to enable professional designers to create great user experiences with better productivity at a lower cost. Frankly, we do this by integrating design and designers into the process of software creation. This is a really important thing. I mean, I'm just, you know, how many people are designers out here? How many are you developers out here? How many are you both? Yeah, a lot of you guys. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the way it works, right? And so, you know, the goal of it is great user experience, and it's really, really hard. I mean, even a developer who doesn't engage with a designer ultimately is a designer. So, anyways, you want to engage both of those people together, whether they're the same person or whether they're part of a team. And you know, we hope our tools really help you do that. And so that's been a mission of why we do these tools in the first place. So the other thing, let's talk about Expression Blend 3's goal. So when we think about a new product, you know, we sit down and we sort of map out the things that we think are super important to address. I usually call this a recipe. And this recipe, these goals, really inform us all the way throughout the process, sometimes a year-long plus process of building software. And there's a couple of things, and let's talk about them. So the first and most important thing that we started out with is a new innovation. You might have seen a little bit of it yesterday in the keynote called Sketchflow. It's really about bringing the process of, thank you. We're pretty excited about it. Thank you. I'm glad you are too. You know, it's a new innovation that brings the power of prototyping, frankly, the process, and this super important process of prototyping into your production tool as well. You know, it's a super. I can go on, and I will later. But it's something we're actually thrilled about, and hopefully you are too. There's a bunch of refinements we've done with Blend, particular in 3 areas. One is in visual design, and it's really about making visual design easier for designers. We'll talk about details about that, but this is something that's always been a little bit vexing. You know, Blend has been made for interaction design, yet people, you know, have told us over and over again they want to do their graphic design, or at least import graphic design into the process of using Blend, and so we've done a lot of work in that area. Another area, which is a strength actually in how we do things like data binding, but it can be a brittle process, and so what we've done is we've really kind of made the process of working with data much more flexible, much more interesting, so you can design with data. It's a really important thing, actually. The other thing is about really the heart and the core of what Blend's all about. I talked about interactivity or interaction design. You know, you've been able to do this in the past, sometimes with code and other ways, but our goal here was to provide a way that you could build interactivity without code. And this is really interesting, and we'll see more about it soon. A couple of other areas I want to touch on that sort of informed what we're doing. One thing we've heard over and over and over again, heard from you all, is the importance of source code control. You know, it's interesting, of course, we, as the Blend team, are fully enabled into the whole process of software creation. Why wouldn't you be as well? And so we enable source code control, not only in Expression Blend, but in Expression Web as well. And the final piece that's super important is, of course, support for Silverlight 3. Everything from hardware acceleration to perspective 3D to the whole enormous amount of controls to little things like element-to-element binding. And so, we've worked in tandem with the Silverlight team to do some really interesting things. So, onwards. So, we're going to start with SketchFlow. So, why did we do SketchFlow? SketchFlow, as I mentioned, is a super important part of the process of creating software. And it solves some pretty interesting problems. First of all, I don't care who you are or what you do, when you start a project, an application, something, somewhere in your mind, and hopefully actually there's a little process around top-down thinking, whether you're doing wireframes or paper prototyping or just thinking about it in your head, it's really, really important to start with, I say, top-down thinking. You're mapping out what's happening, what are the interactions, where are you going in your thing. And we wanted to provide that, but we also wanted to let you freely move into what I call bottoms-up thinking, which is, I'm sketching something out, I really want to put a little emphasis on this little area, and I want to make that super easy to do, and I think we've done that in SketchFlow. This thing called the SketchFlow Player provides a really interesting and important role in SketchFlow as well. So what we wanted to do is make it super easy for you at any point in time in your sketching from the simplest thing to practically production, to be able to spin up your design, play with it, iterate it with it, experiment with it at any point in time. And that's a really, we think, is an important aspect of this. The other thing that the player does is it facilitates communication of your ideas. Now, that could be to any stakeholder. It could be your team. It could be to a client. It could be to your manager. It could, frankly, could be to yourself as you're experimenting and iterating through. Again, following the Bill Buxton process that we know and he spoke so eloquently about yesterday. It's an important thing to be able to do this, and you want that to happen. And I think the other important area about this is the player itself lets you annotate your design, annotate the screen, text, scribble, whatever you want to do. And more importantly than that is it lets you, whether you've given it to somebody, emailed it to somebody, put it on a site, your users, your stakeholders can mail back that feedback, give that feedback, pull it off a machine, put it back into design, by the name, by user, and further inform what's happening in your design. And it's a super important thing. I think I'm going to let Christian do a much more detailed demo than we did yesterday. So, thank you.
All right. Well, so as Doug just said, the idea behind SketchFlow is to make it really easy for you to create prototypes quickly and easily. So in this demo, first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of pretty much all of the Blend UI. Actually, I can use our new workspace feature and actually pick a workspace, because really, for prototyping, we need very, very little of all the functionality of Blend. So, Blend has all these panels and tools for very sophisticated design, but during prototyping, as you will see, we can get away with very, very little UI to work with it. So SketchFlow adds at the bottom here this thing that we call the application flow editor. And that basically allows you to model the flow, the navigation, and the composition of your application in a very, very visual way and in a very informal way. Our model of an app is quite simple. An app is made up from any number of screens that you can connect for navigation and for composition. And also every screen can have any number of states. So in an early prototype, you can think of these screens pretty much as whiteboards that you can just sketch on, you can put scribbles on, you can put Post-its on, and just basically make a very, very rough mock-up of your application. And then you can add real UI as your prototype evolves, and you can make your prototype as real as it needs to be. So in this demo, we're going to build a little snowboard online store, and I already pre-created some bits of this demo just in the interest of time. And let's begin and wire up a little bit more of it. So I just want to start to drag out a new screen. So that's really easy. I just drag on this, and let me give this a name. Let's call it Welcome. And from here, I now want to wire up my shopping pages. I already created that, so I can just basically drag over a wire from here right to these other screens. I also have a little game page here, so I'm going to wire that up as well. And I want one new page, which is basically a community page. So let me drag that out as well. All right. So now I have a structure, I have a flow, I have a rough idea. This is going to be the form, the shape of my site. But I don't have any content. All my screens are completely empty. As I said, they are at the early stage. You can just treat them as whiteboards, and you can just, create rough, informal content on it. So I could go something really, really easy and just use, sketching tools and just sketch. So this is a snowboard store, so I'll make a few mountains and a few slopes. I'm just going to put a post-it here on the site, to explain what this is going to be. This is going to be the welcome screen. Content, TBD, talk to marketing. So just very easy and very quick to just mock up something. In an early stage prototype, it doesn't really matter that much what is on your screen often. It's just about, to sketch out a flow, sketch out an idea in a very rough form. Let me also quickly add a title. I want to have a little title here. So let's just change that to welcome. All right, and move this around. So that's good enough for this screen. Obviously, we can also easily bring in images. So I have already an image that I want to have on this screen. So this is a sketch that I just created somewhere else on a piece of paper. So it's very, very easy to bring these things in and just put them on a screen. And again, in the early stages of a prototype, it's really all about very quickly mocking up things without having to think much and without going through all kind of formal difficulties. So obviously, we are building UI, and eventually we want to use controls. Luckily, Blend has a lot of these, so we have access to all the WPF or Silverlight controls. Maybe one thing I should say, because that question came up on Twitter and on my blog a couple of times. So Blend 3 supports both WPF and Silverlight equally. We have all the same features for both platforms with very, very few differences that depend on the platform. So you can do prototypes as WPF projects or prototypes as Silverlight projects. It really doesn't matter. The prototyping features are exactly the same. The main difference is how you can distribute and evaluate your prototypes, but we get to that in a second. Obviously, Silverlight prototypes can just be distributed over the web, whereas WPF prototypes are applications that you hand out. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. So obviously, in Blend, we have access to all the controls and everything. So I could just draw buttons and sliders or any control I want to have. But if I do that, you notice one thing in the first second, the look of these controls really doesn't match the prototype nature of what I'm doing. I really don't want to have hi-fi controls with the full look of a hi-fi control in my prototype. That's why in Sketchflow, we're basically providing a whole set of what we currently affectionately call wiggly controls. That may not be the final name in the product. And the wiggly controls are basically a set of styles that allow you to get controls that have a sketch style. So to basically preserve a consistent vocabulary of a sketched user interface, and just to drag out these same controls that I had there. So they basically are fully working controls, just different styles of the existing WPF and Silverlight controls. So just to show you a page made that way. So this is a fully working forms page. These are text boxes, these are buttons, but it's very, very easy to sketch these things out using an informal look. And just to demonstrate to you that these are really WPF controls, I can just go and remove the style on these controls, and they will immediately revert back into standard WPF controls. So at any point in your prototype, using the styling capabilities of Blend, you can go and restyle these controls to either create your custom look or to revert them back to the standard WPF look. It's very, very easy. And basically, again, helps a lot to preserve this sketch look of your prototypes. And really, there's also an important factor to that. When you have people evaluate your prototypes, if you give people photorealistic hi-fi looks too early, then people will inevitably focus on the wrong thing. They will focus on rendering details. They will focus on the look of things instead of focusing at the high-level problems, concepts that you are actually trying to demonstrate. So the sketch look is a real efficient way for you to actually work with that. One other thing that I want to mention in terms of creating content is the ability to use components. So in Blend, it is very, very easy to create components on the fly by just drawing and sketching and then selecting your artwork and converting it into a component. And it's really easy for you to create libraries of things like that that you want to use. So for example, here, I just pre-created literally yesterday in 2 minutes, a little lock-in component, that I can just drag and drop from my asset library on my screen. Or another component might be, like a window frame that you want to use during prototyping. So creating libraries of custom components that make prototyping really, really quick is very, very easy. You can drag out these things very, very fast and very easily. So really not a difficult thing to do. So now that we have created a little bit of content, we have the start screen, we have our welcome screen, we have our community screen, we have like a couple of shopping screens here that are partially done. What do we do with an app now? Well, as I said earlier, prototypes are real WPF or Silverlight applications from the very, very first moment on. And because they are applications, we can run them. So let's do that. I can just go to Project and say Run Project, or I can just hit F5. And this will now start my application. Now, let me just get rid of Blend. So the first thing to notice is that the application doesn't just come up as a window, it comes up in this frame here that we call the Sketchflow player. The Sketchflow player does a few things for you. If you have a prototype that is in an early stage and just consists of a bunch of sketches, you probably don't have any UI. So how would you navigate your prototype? How would you try out how the interaction with it actually works? Well, that's where the player comes in. It basically gives you a navigation interface that allows you to navigate through that prototype from the very first moment on. And every connection that you draw on the application flow basically becomes a command that you can use. So I can navigate here to the welcome page. And just to show that, I can also bring up my flow view here as an overview or even make it big. So from the welcome screen, I can go to community, boots, bindings, boards, or the game page. And you see all of these here as commands at the side. So makes it really, really easy to navigate through your prototype and see, oh, okay, I want to buy some boards from here. Okay, I want to go and review my cart, and from here I can go to checkout. So it's really, really easy to try out these things and go back and just navigate through this prototype. So obviously in a prototype we also want to show interaction ideas very, very quickly. And in many ways, animation is a wonderful technique to actually illustrate and demonstrate design intent for user interaction very, very quickly. And you may notice here that this item in my navigation menu is a little bit green, and what this really is a state. So I created a state for this particular page that happens to contain an animation to illustrate how somebody might interact with this prototype. This little mouse cursor here, by the way, is part of the animation, so that's not me. And if I run this animation, you see basically what would happen if somebody interacts with this list box and drags an item into the cart, and hey, there would be an ad coming up to show that there's a big sale going on. So this is clearly much more effective in communicating the design intent than it would be if I just had a static screenshot of this. So again, animations used in states, very, very powerful to communicate design intent in a very quick and very low-cost manner, because the Blend animation system makes it very, very easy to create these type of walkthrough style animations. States, we really introduced this feature in Blend 2 Service Pack 1 and with Silverlight 2 as part of the Visual State Manager. And there's a lot of literature out on that on the web. And we're really reusing states very, very heavily. Every screen can have as many states as you like, organized in state groups. And that's a very powerful feature during prototyping, because you can use them for a lot of important things during prototyping. You can use them, for example, for animations, as I just shown here. You can also use them to manage design alternatives. Let's say your designer is creating, like 2 or 3 different designs for the same page, and you just want to have the ability during a presentation of your prototype to show different design alternatives to your client. And of course, you can use states to actually represent different states that your UI can be in. For example, opening up a tab or bringing up a dialog or whatever. There are endless things that you can do with that. In this demo, I don't have time to go into that in detail, but we have a session on SketchFlow later this afternoon where I'll have a little bit of time to actually go into that. So another very important point as we are presenting a prototype is we want to get feedback. So the SketchFlow player is actually not part of Blend, it's part of your prototype. So whenever you create a prototype project, we automatically insert the player into your prototype project, and it is completely redistributable. So when you create a prototype project, if it's Silverlight, you can just put it up on a website and have people evaluate it from there. If it's a WPF app, you can just hand it off as an archive. And we have built-in features in the player to basically collect feedback and to facilitate feedback collection. So I can go to my feedback tools, and the simple thing I can do is I can just pick a pen and start sketching. So I can go, for example, say I have no idea what this is supposed to be down here, this little rectangle, and I really want to make a note here. Just mark it with an A so that I can find it and type some stuff here and say, we really should show some snowboards here. All right, so what do I do with this feedback once I have created it? Well, as a reviewer, I just go and save this feedback. Blend asks me for my initials here because it's useful to have information who actually gave the feedback. As you can see, this is pre-filled because we look at, if you, for example, have Office installed, we look at the Office author information or at Windows login. So we try to find and pre-fill this field. And then we can just save this feedback. Oops, I already have one with this name. Let's replace it. And then if I quit my player and I go back to Blend, you can basically send this information, these feedback files. Your reviewers can send them, for example, via email to the designer. And the designer can now go in the prototype and open the feedback pane and just add this feedback file to the project. And